We are talking Azrael, also known as Azrael, the Angel of Death. And this is directed by E.L. Katz and stars genre favourite Samara Weaving. Now, this is a hard movie to kind of put in a genre as such. It's part horror, part action, part sci-fi. And it has a unique selling point, which we'll come on to. The story is that it takes place at some point after the Rapture. The Rapture is where God takes his chosen few up to heaven and leaves the rest of us more wanting souls left on earth. So it's somewhat of a post-apocalyptic tale in many ways. And the society now has somewhat regressed into a more primitive state, and the denizens of this new world, so to speak, have chosen not to speak because they believe it is a sin. So everyone is just communicating by visuals or by whistles and things. And effectively we have these cults, I guess, these worshippers, these zealots. And one particular group wants to sacrifice Samara Weaving's character along with her partner to these kind of cannibalistic people that are out in the woods. And inevitably Samara Weaving manages to escape and kind of wants revenge. And then how it all ties up in the end, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it, and let's talk about the unique selling point here. The production crew clearly feel they are artistes. So this movie has no dialogue apart from one character who is kind of outside of the story, so to speak, and even his dialogue is relatively short and not in English. But everyone else has no dialogue in the movie, and that's the kind of like that's the unique selling point. Now, we are going to come on to that again, but let's talk about what works in this movie's favour. Now, I will say the movie's production design looks fantastic. I think the this sort of somewhat post-apocalyptic world is quite well realised in regards to its visual style. Everything is dirty, run down. People are in camps. The kind of the society is somewhat regressing, so to speak. We have these cannibals that are referred to in the credits as burnt men, and they're all kind of charred and things, and they look, they look good. They look like their makeup kind of looks good. And just the general things like the cinematography here is all very, very well done. And that was all pretty good. The other thing I would say as well is the action sequences when we get there, because it kind of plays like an action movie mostly, I would say. And we get various shootouts, we get hand-to-hand combat, we get decapitations and all sorts. Are well realised, done to a good standard with plenty of gore. And the gore is very effective. These kind of burnt men, for lack of a better word, they are cannibalistic. They don't even bother cooking or anything. They're eating straight from the screaming bodies of its victims. And there's some pretty graphic scenes of these cannibals ripping into their victims, tearing their throats out. And it's all done to gruesome and quite realistic effect. I think Samara Weaving does what she can in this role, and obviously a lot of this is down to kind of physical acting because there's no dialogue here, and I think she kind of gets across, what she's trying to do to a certain degree. The VFX, as I've mentioned, I think are very solid. There's the movie ends on quite the kind of the cliffhanger to a certain degree, and it kind of ties in with the biblical themes of the movie. And I have to say there's a decent VFX on display, and you almost kind of want to watch the movie that would come next to a large degree, I will say. What doesn't work? So we have to talk about the non-verbal elephant in the room, because the whole kind of like unique selling point, if we can call it that, is that there's no dialogue. No one speaks this movie outside there's one sequence and there's one guy, which is pretty, inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, to be honest. Why was this done? Is it because the filmmakers feel they want to have an artistic imprint And I don't think it helps the story. So let's just roll back a little bit though. Let's talk about the Rapture. Now, we don't really know. There's very little kind of context in this movie. We don't really know how long this has happened. We assume, I would say, it's not that long because we have working cars with petrol or diesel, and that seems to be working fine. There's plenty of ammo for guns. And we're assuming because this society has somewhat regressed, people aren't out there refining oil to make, you know, gasoline and such, and there's no industry. So that it can't be that long after the kind of the Rapture, but at the same time, we have these kind of society just seems to have all accepted that you shouldn't speak. And I'm thinking, I'm not a religious person, but I don't really remember anything about voicing being a problem. I mean, how are you supposed to pray and spread the word of God and all that sort of thing if that's the case? And why aren't people communicating through writing? Why aren't people communicating through sign language? You know, and then we kind of looking at the time frame again, we have these cannibals which seem to be like they're just feral, you know. So that would suggest it's been a while. But then, like Samara Weaving's character, she hears music for the first time. She's like, "Oh my God, what's that?" So we're assuming, oh, well, this can't be like just a few years there because she hasn't even heard music because she doesn't know what it is. But then it kind of goes against what, as I say, we've well, how can there be working vehicles and things? It's like, and because we have no dialogue, nothing is really explained. And when I always think about like movies that include the Rapture, I'm thinking, well, what about the other religions, like, you know, outside of Christianity and stuff? I mean, what are they thinking? I'm thinking, damn, we got it wrong. You know, what are they doing? There's just no context, and that's even before we get to the movie. Now, that's just the setup, as I say. You know, the world we live in, I think, it's not explained, and I think the movie is deliberately doing that. So don't be expecting lots of answers here. Don't be expecting to have a fully realised world, because you ain't going to get it, and it's by design. So as we watch the movie, moving on from that, you know, there's no dialogue, and I have to say, it's pretty dull. I mean, there's some good action sequences, but because we don't have characters interacting, it just kind of feels like drawn out now, and there's not a huge amount of, you know, plot in regards to twists and turns and reveals, and there's a little bit, but there's not a huge amount. So it's people running around in the woods, slow kind of sequences, someone walking up the stairs, that's a good like 90 seconds. And it feels like this was done to try and make more of an artistic statement rather than it served the story. You know, and I just think it makes the movie dull. You don't get involved in the characters as much. You know, how is communication then kind of passed on? Things like this. Who's decided that it's no, you know, no one can speak, and how is that then communicated? People don't even cry in pain, really. I don't know. This movie I found rather lacking in sort of context. And then even just the story itself, it's ultimately just this girl wants her revenge to kind of like, because they killed her boyfriend or what have you. That's kind of it when it comes down to it. And then we have some things that are revealed at the very, very end, which leads me to think that would have been a more interesting film. What would have happened next would have been a more interesting movie. And there's some elements that kind of hint to that, and you know, there's even like is there like a demonic glory hole in this movie? Yeah. I don't know, it seems like this movie just wanted to have this, you know, A24 style artistic flair, but as a sort of a narrative device, it just makes this movie seemed very shallow to me, and not as interesting as it could have been. This could have been an interesting idea, but I don't think the world is fully realised. You don't really buy into the characters all that much. You don't really understand the reasons why people are doing things, or even down to the non-talking. So it ultimately becomes nice to look at, but kind of like a little bit of a chore to get through. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to you next time.